predator stalks you from the shadows, so you cast a light in its direction. The monster changes shape, a glamour or camouflage you cannot be sure. You listen for its heartbeat, for anything to give away its position, but its sounds suddenly stop. Dread fills you. No matter how you try to combat this threat, it always seems to be a step ahead of you. A sinking feeling washes over you. There is no escape. You're finished. Greetings everyone and welcome back to the Ether Hub. I'm Simon, bringing you more Magic the Gathering lore. In this video, we're continuing our journey through the macabre and dark places of MTG's story. This is 13 Nights of Magic. The moon is high, a chilly breeze on the air. Time for another spooky MTG story. Today we're discussing Slivers. What is their lore? What makes them unique in Magic the Gathering? And what could be their possible story moving forward? You guys are really gonna like this one, as I dedicate a portion of it to a fan who's been in my comments lately trying to get me to discuss this very topic. And I'm happy to tell you, Mason King, that today I will. And I thank you for your suggestion. Now, let's get into the lore. Slivers hold a special place in Magic the Gathering story. They're frightening creatures that terrify their prey in more ways than just the conventional. As unsettling as their appearance may sometimes be, the truly scary thing about Slivers is their unmatched ability to evolve and adapt. Because everything in this vast multiverse can have a solution if pondered upon long enough, how would you stop a wave of devastation that changes faster than the tides themselves? Once you've conjured a solution, the Slivers have already changed to meet it, throwing the whole idea of predator-prey co-evolution off balance. Slivers are the ultimate predators, and we will forever be their prey. It's unknown where Slivers originate from, but there have been stories shared across the multiverse of a world that has been utterly overwhelmed by these creatures, giving us a glimpse of what could happen anywhere else. This unnamed plane in its distant past had used Slivers as simple beasts of burden. Their ability to evolve made them perfect to carry out all manner of menial tasks. They could learn to do anything, from pulling a cart of crops to later growing and harvesting them as well. The rulers of this society grew complacent though. It blinded them to how quickly their supposed domesticated Slivers were evolving. In truth, the Slivers they chained on the surface were but a small portion of their population. Their central hive was located deep beneath the world's crust, in the cavernous depths, and they only truly followed the commands of their queen. The queen of the Sliver hive is an extremely important figure. As creatures, Slivers take orders from their queen through their shared hive mind. Each order is followed without question or hesitation. Though she was safe from the chains deep within her hive, the queen still yearned to free her children. She played a patient game though, showing immense strategy, and waited until their anatomy's natural evolution gave them the edge in the coming conflict. And that day eventually came when the Sliver Queen mastered the final adaptive hurdle, death itself. The Queen had adapted to this inevitability, and thus could no longer be killed, a trait she shared with her entire brood. Not only were the Slivers denied death, they could also resurrect others who had fallen, creating a horde of zombie Slivers. Needless to say, with this adaptation, the Sliver Queen, known now as the Grave Mother, easily overthrew those civilizations who had enslaved her children. Faster than any other known conquering force, the Slivers swept over the entire plane, purging kingdoms who had once stood for centuries in a single night. There was no force on the plane that could stop them. Eventually, all traces of their former masters laid in rubble, but the people there still survived. Slivers, after all, do need to feed, despite no longer needing to live. It's in their very nature. So the Grave Mother is keeping those populations captured alive, farming them like cattle, using them whenever the need strikes her brood. A hellish fate for any world infested by the Slivers. And soon, the Slivers would be interplanar. They would be discovered on this unnamed plane by Volrath, a rather terrifying figure in his own right who acted out the will of Yawgmoth and his Phyrexian war machine. Like the Slivers, the Phyrexians looked to bring the entire multiverse under a singular hive mind, and on a more personal note, Volrath was interested in the creatures as a manner of study, believing their ability to evolve and adapt could prove useful for Phyrexia. He managed to capture a number of the brood along with a queen, and brought them back to the artificial world of Wrath, where Phyrexia was planning its invasion of Dominaria. Volrath experimented on the Slivers, and learned how to tap into the hive mind of the queen to better control her and the brood. He created a device known as the Hive Stone that aided in this. He so trusted in their obedience and deadly efficiency that Volrath left them to guard the Legacy, a collection of artifacts created by Phyrexia's ultimate enemy, Urza, meant to destroy them. The Legacy was placed right in the middle of the hive, dooming any who seek it. Luckily, heroes of Dominaria, including Karn, were able to also tap into the Sliver's hive mind, and Karn even communicated with the Queen directly. He made the argument that the Legacy was a part of him, much like the Brood were a part of her. Understanding this, Karn was able to leave with the Legacy and their lives. During Phyrexia's invasion of Dominaria, Slivers piggybacked on the Wrathy overlay and found themselves dumped on a new world. Only their queen perished in the phasing. Following the defeat of Yawgmoth and the fall of Phyrexia, many of the lesser Slivers too would be dealt with, leaving them essentially extinct on this plane. That is, until scholars again decided knowledge came before common sense. Several years after the invasion, wizards involved in the Riptide project found the remains of Slivers and engineered them back to life. They didn't understand the importance of a queen to control the hive mind, so they only cloned the drones. Without a queen, the Slivers ran rampant, evolving chaotically and breeding without any control. The wizards were so worried about if they could that they didn't think about if they should. These teeming hordes lashed out at anything they found, but it wasn't out of malice. It was out of confusion and desperation. They were searching for a queen. They craved control, but they couldn't find it on Dominaria. Until, throughout the hive mind, a whisper rang out. They believed it was a queen, something reaching out to them to flock towards it. However, this wasn't a Sliver queen, but the effects of a powerful artifact, the Mirari, and it brought the Slivers in just before it exploded and gave birth to the avatar Corona. The Slivers caught in this blast evolved into something more, making a Sliver Overlord. Those individual Slivers who still survived, as few as they were, still were in search for a queen, conditions that made them ripe for manipulation. Anyone who could mimic the hive mind could control this deadly swarm. Such was the case of the Weaver King. Though his control was short-lived, it showed just how a bad actor could use the Slivers against their enemies. With the Weaver King's death, the Slivers again have no hive mind to follow, but their evolution seemed to be correcting this problem in their own anatomy. It appears that the hive mind itself is becoming self-aware, removing the need of a queen to direct the swarm. Now evidence shows that the swarm can lead itself because the swarm collectively thinks for itself. The hive could be millions strong, but all are a single mind, and that one mind is all of the Slivers, an individual of a million separate parts. This higher form of thinking, the Sliver Legion, remains now under the surface of Dominaria, growing and evolving. One day, it may come to the conclusion that the only way the Slivers can adapt to hostilities is to remove those hostile for good, repeating the events which happened all those years ago on that unnamed plane from which they came. Now, that is essentially where the Sliver story ends, but that won't be the last time we hear about these adaptive monsters. We're seeing new, ever-evolving, unique Sliver cards get printed, and there's no sign that they'll be going away anytime soon. So that beckons us to look forward. With the multiverse undergoing some extreme changes in the lore recently, what could be next for the Slivers? In my comments, there has been someone leaving remarks on almost every video I put out saying the same thing. Yes, Mason King, I'm talking to you. With Omenpaths opening up across planes, allowing non-planeswalkers to traverse the Blind Eternities, how could they be used to further the Sliver story? Could the siren call of the first Sliver, the Grave Mother, echo through the Omenpaths, calling all of her wayward children home, creating this giant plane of only Slivers? So this is firmly theory territory, but as cool of an idea as this is, the collective hive mind of the multiverse finally connected, and perhaps even spreading through the Omenpaths, I just don't think it fits with the Slivers vibe. So from my perspective, I feel like the Slivers are currently in a unique place, having evolved their own hive mind absent a queen, which was really hindering them in their design. Now, free of a queen, would this sentient hive go back to following the orders of a queen calling them through an Omenpath? Or would this set up some conflict? That itself would prove really interesting, a struggle between a sentient hive and another who has a queen. But I just don't see the Slivers of Dominaria rejoining the multiversal hive after just essentially gaining their own independent thought. As for the idea of the Slivers spreading throughout the multiverse, well, I think that could very easily be a thing, but it wouldn't be as catastrophic as one would think. We know from their story that Slivers have the ability to process thought. They're not just some mindless beings, and that's especially true as their evolution advances. We also know that, even without a queen, they don't attack randomly without cause. They adapt to meet challenges. So long as they're left alone and thriving, there really isn't a need to conquer complete worlds in the same manner they did on their original home. It's just not what we find going on with them now on Dominaria. And it goes without saying that we've already had two other species of semi-hive-minding nature attacking in large-scale invasions, the Eldrazi and the Phyrexians. So that line would be a little played out by now. Anything, of course, can happen when the subject we're discussing is ever-changing. Slivers have a lot to offer a story, but in my heart, I feel like they may be used in a way that's surprising to a lot of MTG fans. But again, this is all just a theory. And I want to thank you, Mason King, for kickstarting this conversation and inspiring this video with your comment. Or rather, your comments, plural. And there you go, my little panicking planeswalkers, another night of spooky stories as we go through the 13 nights of Magic. This video was for you, Mason King. Yes, I've seen your comments, and your persistence is to be commended. I hope this video was everything you've been looking forward to, and I just want to give you as much credit as possible for inspiring this video. Now for the rest of you, please let me know if you're enjoying the frightening content in the comment section below. Please support our haunting work by leaving this video a like, sharing it with friends, and becoming a subscriber. It's the absolute best way to help us spread more grief across the multiverse. And until the next foreboding evening, friends, see ya!